All right, we are live. Let's just check to make sure. Is my Facebook running here? Give me a thumbs up, maybe, as people join. We'll just see if I am live in here. Three people are on, it says, as of now, but I can't see you. Can I get a thumbs up or a hello or hey, what's going on? All right, got a thumbs up. Cool. Hey, we are here. Awesome. Okay, so super cool. Yeah, I see everyone's joining. They can hear me. One quick reminder up my hockey group. So I'm using this platform called StreamYard. So StreamYard does an amazing job of, doing the graphics like you see here and allowing me to schedule stuff. But the only problem is that right now I'm seeing Facebook user with a thumbs up and hey, we are here, Facebook user. So I don't get to see your name on this unless you allow StreamYard to use your name. And at the bottom of the post with StreamYard, it always tells you how to do it. It really honestly takes like 30 seconds. You got to click the URL and do a check mark, and then you're good to go. So for any of you that have been joining or want to join, and if you want to ask a question, I would really like to know who is talking to me. It makes it a little more personal, and I like that about the group. So yeah, so you can totally do that if you want to. If not, and you want to be anonymous, that's fine too. But just letting you know that for me to give you a shout out, I would need to know your name. So today is super exciting. We have Shawnee Harle waiting in the broadcast room to come out. She's amazing. I heard her first speak at Vernon. She does the Western Canadian tour. She gets called out quite a bit to speak from stage on her presentations about mental toughness. I happened to watch her, stayed till the end, and wanted to ask a few questions of my own. Ended up taking her for coffee, and now I would consider Shawnee a friend and a compatriot in this mindset journey that we're on. And she's a coach as well. So we are really blessed to have her here with us tonight. And I'm also excited, like I said earlier, for those of you who maybe saw or didn't see, I was asked by the Coaches Site, which is a big site for coaches in the hockey world. They hold a summit every year. And obviously this year with COVID, they couldn't hold their usual conference. So they're doing a virtual summit this year, and it's starting this Saturday and Sunday. And they approached me from my work with the Up My Hockey podcast and said, hey, we love what you're about. We love the messaging to these young athletes and to the parents and to the coaches. And we would love you to interview a head coach if you could. And I agreed with a big smile on my face and ended up reaching out to Bruce Boudreau, who is, if you guys are into hockey at all, you know that he's been a coach in the NHL for about 15 years, currently unemployed. He was just fired by Minnesota this past season. But he agreed to come on, and that's who I'm going to be interviewing. So along with being a part of the presenter group, they gave me some passes. So I get to give out these $250 passes to you guys. So I think that's super special. So anyone who's here tonight, which is another reason why you should have your name going, because then I'll know who is here, and you're going to be in a draw to win this $250 pass to this virtual summit. Tons of great stuff in there. You get access to all the content for 30 days. Even if you're not a coach and just a parent, it's an awesome thing just to get educated on, help your player get educated. So I'm really excited about being able to offer that to everybody. So with that being said, that's enough preamble. We do have a big announcement that you should wait for till the end, because I'm really excited about that. Shawnee and I are going to announce something. And without further ado, I'm going to bring in Miss Shawnee Harle. And there she is. Thanks for joining us, Shawnee.
With bells on.
Hey, we did it. We did it. Oh, Melissa's in. Awesome. Good. So Melissa's here. My Carol Bryant's here, who happens to be my mom. She likes following it, so that's cool. I'll announce that. Hi, Mom. And there's definitely some other people here too as well, which is great. So Shawnee, I know we want to keep this to an hour, and I know that you and I, when we get together, can just talk forever. So let's try and do everyone a favor, and I'll try and keep it on point. As you heard, I gave you a little introduction there earlier. For those who read the bio that I wrote, you're basketball at heart, but definitely have branched out from that with your coaching, and you're dealing with athletes in multiple disciplines right now. Why on your banner right there behind you, when I go to your website, why do you like to use the tagline "Winning Matters"? I think that's a good place to start.
Because it does. I think that winning matters in every single thing that we do. And I think there are so many definitions of that word. And I think sport has messed up that definition in every way, shape, and form. So I want to give people a bigger and broader definition of winning because it really does matter.
Awesome. And so, you mean there's a lot of parents, I'm sure, cheering in the background right now, because I think a lot of people feel that, competition has been stripped from school, has been stripped from sports, and, we're not allowed to keep score anymore. And we have to pretend that there's no winners and everybody's equal. And in some contexts, this is okay. I think maybe the pendulum for me has swung too far the other way. Do you mean winning in the physical sense, or do you also mean maybe winning on different levels, whether it be mentally or practically, or how do you define winning, I guess, in your terms?
Well, I think that's the great thing about sport is we have things to measure. And I think the scoreboard is one of those things. I think statistics are one of those things. I think that scoring goals and your saves against average, I'm not sure if that's the right goalie language, but I must be close. I think all of those things really matter. But don't you think that leaves out such a big piece of the package? Because to me, that means that you can win with no emphasis on measuring your character or your values. And I mean, for almost every athlete that goes into sport, they don't end up becoming a professional athlete. So at the end of the day, how much did the scoreboard matter when I was, in grade 7? If I'm not going to be a professional athlete, but I can show you all my medals, but I can't tell you or prove anything to you about my character or my values. So what I think is super important in this journey of sport and the journey of winning, how are we helping our kids become great people along the way? Like, what if you're a real jerk and you win all the time? Like, is that okay? Is that enough to just measure winning by the scoreboard? So what I really believe is important and what I teach in my mental toughness is I think that the most important medal that you can win is a gold medal for becoming the best version of yourself. And I think that the most important podium is the podium of life.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome. I like that analogy that you did there too, or maybe it's called metaphor. I'm not sure which one it is. But yeah, which is one of the reasons I was drawn to you, because when I'm dealing with the athletes I deal with, like whether it's, clients that are paying me to help them, or whether it's a team that I'm volunteering for, that's a big deal for me, right? Is like, I want them to leave better people, almost first and foremost. Of course, the platform that we're talking about allows them to be better athletes, which is really important to the kid, right? Or the player, which is why they're signed up and why they want to be there. But the little nuance, which is fun, and the behind the scenes stuff actually makes them better character, better people, right? Better citizens of life. And I was really drawn to you in the way that you talked about that and emphasized that. And that's really what one of the biggest things about Up My Hockey is not just hockey, but it's about, hey, how do we become better versions of ourselves, better humans? So super cool. I agree with on winning. We can measure it on a lot of different ways. When I've done some coaches clinics before, that's one thing that I talk about, which I think you'll probably resonate is we have all these barometers for like what type of forecheck we're going to use and how we're going to run the power play or what our line combinations are, all these things. But it's like, what are your metrics for that other side, the character side? Like, pick 3 at the start of the year, like what you want to focus on every practice. Is it resilience? Is it perseverance? Is it good sportsmanship? Like, whatever those things are, if that's a tenet of your team and you make that the backbone of your practice instead of maybe stick handling or skating, all those other skills are going to be evolved around those character traits. So I'm a big fan of what you're talking about, which brings us to mental toughness, because you have kind of positioned yourself in that niche of mental toughness specifically, and a lot of people, I mean, at least back in the day when I was going through it and being, a first rounder and a highly touted player. And I mean, mental toughness was a thing, but it wasn't taught. It was kind of like, yeah, well, you got to be mentally tough. And, are you or aren't you? Right. Which kind of left it in the realm of DNA. You have it or you don't. I think it's evolved into a scenario where we think it's now more of a skill. Would you think it's a skill that can be developed and improved?
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of things in life that we are not born with. I don't think there's a gene for mental toughness, because if there was, how awful if you're in the group that didn't have the gene and you're like, oh no, heck no, you go over to that end of the ring because you're one of the ones that doesn't have that gene.
Right.
Like, wouldn't that be awful? I mean, I really believe that it is a skill. I mean, much like a slap shot, nobody's born knowing how to be, have a hard slap shot, an accurate slap shot, but somehow it gets developed. Yes, it gets developed stronger, faster, quicker in some than others, but everybody gets a fair chance of learning a slap shot. Well, I think mental toughness, it's exactly the same. You're not born with it. You can grow it.
Are there any stories? I mean, it's one thing you said the word think, and I think because I think you've seen it, and I know I've talked to you about it before. Like you've seen it in your clients and the people you work with, that they do come from these places of anxiety or fear or doubt, and then they turn into these ambassadors of belief, right? Which is pretty cool. Like, can you speak? You don't have to name names, but I'm sure maybe one story, a star story of something that has happened with a client of yours.
Oh, absolutely. I'm working. I'll use a hockey example. I'm working with let me see. I think he just turned 13. And I'm working with a hockey player who I started out with him and I was like, whoa, this doesn't quite seem like he's going to be cut out for this sport. Timid, shy. Parents would say he doesn't have any confidence. And I just got an email recently and a text from him saying, hey, Coach Shawnee, guess what? So there were big tryouts going on. And of course, going into it, he's like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And I'm like, come on, man. We've been working at this for a few months now. And long story short, he started with me as this timid, shy, ultra introverted. And the introversion was really holding him back because he didn't want to talk to anybody. He didn't want to ask questions. And all of a sudden became this 13-year-old that just made a team that has been his biggest dream, for this entire year. They just went through these tryouts. And I'm like, you know what? Like, that just goes to show, like, he is definitely not the biggest. Yeah. He's not the strongest. I'm telling you right now. So what did he have? What was that? I call it that, your secret sauce. Yeah. And he was able to develop his mental toughness in a way that took him above and beyond that perhaps only what his physical skills could take him. And he grew his mental toughness muscle. And I believe it is a muscle, and it gets stronger when you use it. And he just made this rep team that he's been trying for a year for this to happen.
That's awesome. That's a great story. I just finished like my first round of sessions with a client on Friday, and went through the same scenario. And he made the team that he wanted to make, a AAA midget team that there was a little bit of uncertainty and some doubt, and just with that big smile on his face, like can't believe how far he's come, right, and know that there's more to go. And it's just, I mean, that's just, as a coach, it just lights you up. So no, that's great. It definitely can change, and that's the thing and this discussion, even like I know parents are listening right now, like have your kids listen to it, because it's not something that we usually necessarily talk about in a way that is applicable and applicable, or even like that it resonates in a way that, oh, I maybe I can change, or I have an ability to handle some of these things. So yeah, please share this interview after, during, now. Bring your athlete in, because it's good for us to discuss, and it's good for them to hear. I love your comments in the section there, Shawnee. You said, "Oh, I hope Jason asked me about this." I've never had somebody kind of run their own interview, but I was like, "Those are amazing questions." So let's just go down the list. I wrote them down, and I think it's perfect. So you said, number one, why is confidence overrated and unreliable? What do you mean by that? And tell us what that's all about.
Well, first of all, my definition of confidence is an emotion based on results. So if you're not good at something, why in the world would anyone expect you to be confident? And I hear parents and coaches giving this advice to their kids: just get out there and be confident. I'm like, that's the worst advice in the world. If I'm not very good, I cannot be confident. In my opinion, confidence and competence are related. They're connected. If you asked me to go and take you on a basketball court, I would be pretty confident in my coaching abilities. But if you said, Shawnee, you're coming tomorrow to my hockey practice and you're going to run this drill called something. See, I can't even think of a name of a drill. And you're going to run this drill and you're not even going to know what the name of it is, and just go out there and be confident. I'll be like, heck no, I'm not good at it, so I can't be confident. The reason I also think that it is unreliable, I'll give you an example. I work with an LPGA golfer, and a week ago, she won a Symetra Tour event. Like, that's a big deal. This week, she shows up for an LPGA event and sends me a message the night before, and she's like, oh my goodness, this course scares the crap out of me. And she goes, how come I don't feel confident? And I'm like, it's because of what I've been telling you. Confidence is unreliable and it's overrated. Instead, what I teach is courage. Because I think that you can be brave and afraid at the same time. And I'm quoting Brene Brown there, which means you could say to me, Shawnee, you're coming tomorrow. You're going to run this drill. And I'm going to be like, oh boy, wonder how that's going to go. And then I can still show up, put it on the table, and say, well, people, here's how we're going to do the drill, even though I don't have any idea of what I'm talking about. You can be brave and afraid at the same time, because fear or lack of confidence is an emotion, and courage or bravery is an action. Those two things can happen simultaneously.
Right. I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I think a lot of that's interesting, and maybe I think we got some time to unpack a little bit of stuff. So one of the first things you said was about results, that confidence is usually directly related to results. And I do believe, and I think that's the way most people kind of feel about it too, right? If you actually think about it from a practical standpoint. One of the things where I'll ask you a question is not necessarily a pushback, but I can relate to that in the sense of me all the way up. Every time there's a leveling up process, as far as going from Bantam to Junior A, let's say, or going from Junior A to the WHL, or going from the WHL to the minors or the NHL camp, right? Like every time you level up, you haven't got results to that level before, right? So you might have been amazingly successful at the level you're at, and you've never really ran into problems, but you've never done it where you're going, so there's this level of uncertainty. So there's confidence in your game, and I guess in myself, we'll use myself as an example, that, yeah, I think I should be able to get it done there, or I can get it done because I've done it everywhere else, and this is where I'm supposed to go. But I ran into that issue really for the first time at the NHL level, where I think that really mattered to me, that I hadn't done it there, that I hadn't proven it yet to myself. So I could definitely relate what you're saying there to, like, the results. Now, in saying that I agree with you. How do I, and one of the things that I do when I teach my guys is trying to build confidence off of things other than the results, right? So I like how you're taking the action and saying courage. I like saying, you know what, if you are really digging in, and if you've really done the things, whether it's the mental visualization, whether it's the physical stuff in the gym, whether it's whatever these things are that place you in a position of feeling, you know what, I've done more, I'm in the right place, this is where I deserve to be. Would you classify that sort of level of well-being, entitlement, not entitlement, empowerment, could that be classified also as confidence or not?
Well, I also think confidence is connected to preparation.
Right.
And when you've put in the time, like I said this to the LPGA golfer, I said to her, okay, have you put in the time? Yes. Have you worked on your short game? Yes. Have you worked with your swing coach to improve your accuracy off the tee? Yes. Have you been doing your your dry land training? Yes. And I'm like, okay, check, 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 check. Confidence is earned. And the way that I'm looking at the check boxes right now, you checked all of them. So what's going on here with why are you not feeling confident? And I come back to that unreliability thing.
Right.
It goes up and down. But I totally agree with you that if you can check the boxes of preparation, does that make a difference when you show up in an environment where you feel a little bit uncertain? You're like, you know what? I'm prepared. And being prepared, in my opinion, is different than being ready.
Right. Gotcha. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Because I think when people say I'm ready, I think it's an emotion. And I think half the time it's people trying to talk them. I'm ready, man. I got this. Yeah, right. I got this. And then I watch them and I'm like, oh, no, you don't got this. No, you are not ready and you're not prepared. To me, preparation, I don't have to hype it up. I don't have to talk myself into the fact that I'm ready because I'm prepared. I think I'm prepared is the substance, and I think I'm ready is the fluff.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And the focus too. I mean, again, I'm thinking about my time, back trying to make that jump to the NHL level. And it's, what was I focused on before those games? My mind wasn't on the right things, because there's other things going on, and to be our best, we have to have the self-talk and you have to create that internal environment. So for this confidence and your preparedness and all these things to be able to flourish. I do think that there's other elements involved there other than the results. And if we can build that foundation, that will allow us to get to those results, other confidence foundations, we're good to go. You said self-esteem is more important than confidence. I like this one. I'll let you take the lead. How is self-esteem more important than confidence? Oh, and just a reminder here to everybody who's watching, by all means, if you have a question at any point, that's what I love about what we're doing here right now, and Shawnee loves it too, please type it in the chat box. We can put it on the screen, or I can just read it out, and it's meant to be interactive. So if you're curious, be a curious observer and ask away. So Shawnee, self-esteem more important than confidence. How do you mean that?
Well, the way that I look at it, remember I said earlier that I think confidence is unreliable. It's an emotion. It goes up and down. And I think self-esteem is more of a personality characteristic. So that means even on days, if I use the example of, you told me I have to come into your hockey practice and run a drill that I've never heard of, I won't feel very confident. And I might not do very well when I run the drill. But when I leave the rink, I still like me. I could be like, you know what? It kind of sucked right there. Yikes. I'm definitely not a very good hockey coach right now, but I still like me. So my performance does not affect the view of who I am. That I understand that sport is about highs and lows, ups and downs, joy and sorrow, thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. And I think that when we have self-esteem, it allows us to manage those highs and lows, and they don't affect us to our inner core. So as an example, this is another hockey player that I worked with. He lost, his team lost this important game. So I'm not sure when you're 12 years old, it's amazing how you think things are important when 10 years from now you won't even remember them. However, and I talked to his mom after the fact, and she said, Shawnee, it's been 6 weeks. And so where I kind of went 6 weeks and he's still in a funk. He still can't get over it. And the way that I think of that is when we have low self-esteem, wins and losses affect us to an unhealthy extent because we believe that the win and loss reflects on who we are. When I win, it tells me I'm this amazing world-beating champion of the world. Look at me, how awesome I am, which could be a little inflated. And when I lose, it tells me I really must be a lousy person. When we have self-esteem, we don't go over these big peaks and valleys. We understand winning and losing is normal. In fact, losing happens way more than winning. There's only going to be one Stanley Cup champion coming up pretty soon here. Imagine how crappy everyone else is going to feel. So the reason that I believe self-esteem is more important, because I think self-esteem is a characteristic that gets us through the highs and lows, not just of sport, but of life. And it helps us keep the highs and lows to a healthy perspective and makes it easier to manage.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, as you're speaking there, I'm thinking of how that applies to my coaching and my teachings, and we're definitely interwoven in some ways. A lot of that sounds like it's coming from a growth mindset, right? Like building
Yes.
self-esteem off of ideas that, failure doesn't mean ineptitude, or doesn't mean you're not important. It just, it's how do we frame that as being a stepping stone to something greater, right? How can we learn from this? One of the things that I talk about, that's my mindset 102, and in mindset 103, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much, but I talk about what you're talking about with the self-esteem. Like you talked about wins and losses, hockey players. That could probably be goalies. That could be hockey players in general. It could be goals and assists. It could be like a lot of these things, like these results things,
Yes.
is how we get it, right? So we come off the ice, everyone's telling us, oh, great game. You got 3 goals, great game. You did this, you did that. And it's usually around these marks. The thing that I teach my clients is that you get to pick how you get self-esteem. Like it's actually a choice. So, does it have to be the 2 goals and someone telling you that you're great? Or can it be because that you decided that you're going to feel really great about yourself, that every time you fall over, you're going to be the first one to get back up? Or you're going to work the hardest on the back check? Like these things that you can kind of control, right? Your persistence, right? And if you qualify yourself as the most persistent person on the ice, and that's what you build your self-esteem around, now that you're empowered with that choice, right? Like you can't control the results sometimes. You can't control whether the coach is going to say, great job, kid. You did great tonight. Like you can't control those things, but if you can control some of these other barometers, right? And if you want to make that choice, and again, recognize that you can make the choice, right? Like that's a big statement in and of itself, right? That the choice is yours on how you want to feel good about yourself. And I think when you build your self-esteem, as you say, off of things that are of your doing, things you can control, metrics that you can pick, man, I mean, that's pretty powerful, I think. Would you agree with that?
Without a doubt. I mean, it's one of the chapters in each of the lessons that I teach. It's called Decisions Decide Destiny.
Right.
And when we get to decide whose opinion matters, and I believe the most important approval is self-approval.
Yeah.
And yet, having said that, to have self-approval, we need to have proof and evidence that we're worthy of approving of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if the only evidence that we look for is goals scored, points for and against, there are some pretty empty cups out there.
Right.
And those are also things that are out of our control. And so if we can decide again, and isn't it interesting what we're actually talking about? We're talking about building character, and we're talking about core values.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that is a reflection of our self-esteem. And what you said is you get to choose that. And I said decisions decide destiny.
Right.
So really what we're talking about is what do we choose to put our attention on? And to me, it's always the substance, because goal scoring comes and goes. You get up against a hot goalie, all of a sudden you didn't score very much. So if those kinds of things come and go, what's the substance
Right.
that you can count on every single time you step on the ice? And it's already what you said. You said persistence. We might say grit. We might say second effort. We might say aggressive.
Right.
Those are the things that you can hang your hat on. Those are the things that build self-esteem.
100%. Yeah, no, it's as you're talking and I'm talking, and so I always get jacked up talking with you. Some people in the group have said, "Why would you bring on Shawnee? Like that's almost what like you almost do that. That's what you do. You're like a mindset coach." And I'm like, it's not about cornering the market. You know, like there's first of all, there's 1,000 people in this group right now. Even if every single person wanted to work with me, I couldn't do it. Right. And the other thing is that my message, although similar, we're a bit different, right? So like your message to somebody's going to mean something different. The way you word it, the way you frame it, the way you pose it, right? Like that is going to resonate with somebody different than maybe the way I say it. So that's why I love doing this, right? Like I'm about bringing people in, right? Offering more to more people so then they can find that message, the thing that works. I'm not worried. You know, I mean, anyways, to get back to those people, I am not worried about Shawnee Harle taking all my clients away. I mean, that's not what this is about at all. This is about you being able to, share what's worked for you. And if someone out there digs it, that's exactly why we're doing it. Like that's exactly what this is all about. So we do have a couple of questions, Shawnee. It's what does it mean to be prepared? When we're talking about preparation, what does that mean to be prepared as an athlete?
Well, what I would say is that I believe that athletes know when they're not. I really do. I'm going to give you an example. I worked with a downhill ski racer. 2 days before his event, he sends me a text message. Shawnee, I'm getting ready for my race in 2 days. Can you help me get more confident? And I texted back and I said, no, I can't. Because what's the reason that you're not confident? Tell me why you're not confident. And he said to me, well, I missed training. I missed a training session. And then I also said to him, what time have you been going to bed? And he said, well, I haven't been in bed before 12:30 for about the last 3 nights in a row. I said, okay, so what time are you having breakfast? Well, when I go to bed late, I sleep till 11. So all I have to do is start asking questions. And then I say to him, so have you been preparing? And what I talk about in my coaching is I talk about high performance habits. And when athletes are clear on what high performance habits are, they know exactly when they're prepared and when they're not prepared. It's like check the box. High performance habits, going to bed late. No, not a high performance habit. Eating twice a day. No, not a high performance habit. Every time we say no to a checkbox, that's something that means you're not prepared. And when I talk to athletes and I ask them, do you feel prepared for tomorrow? They're like, oh yeah, I totally do. And and I'll say to them, give me 4 things that show proof and evidence of preparation. And if they can't give me 4 things, I'm like, well, you just lied to yourself. And it's not going to work because you lied. You don't
Right.
trick yourself.
Right.
And you're not going to trick me. That's why I'm your coach. I'm hard to trick. So what I mean when I say preparedness, if you just ask any athlete or you have a parent and say, just watch your child and have a list. Here's high performance habits. Here's low performance habits. Where does your child fit? It's not hard. You're going to know what high performance looks like and what it doesn't look like. And athletes, they know.
Yeah, and at a younger level, sometimes maybe they don't know, but that's where like these conversations come in, right? The downhill skier you're talking about, of course he knew, right? He's at that level where he knows. An 8-year-old or a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old might not know. I'm also not in the vein of like making kids do stuff, but I like having the conversations, right? Like they have a big game tomorrow. Oh, what do you think is going to make you play better tomorrow? Oh, I don't know. Should you go to bed at 11 or 9? What do you think? Having the Socratic kind of dialogue, right? Do you think what type of breakfast do you think is important? Do you think that's going to help you play? And then they're empowered then to make these choices. And now you're showing them high performance habits. You're showing them how to be prepared. Not to mention, when kids shoot pucks at hockey players, right? Or they do these things away from the rink, you are now able to remind them as a parent or as a coach that you've done these things that a lot of other kids haven't done. You should feel good about yourself. You've earned the right to feel good about yourself because you've done these things. So now you're building that preparedness mindset into their routines, right? That they're somebody who goes about their thing a little different. And I've seen that with my players. I've seen that with my own kids 100%. That they just walk into that rink feeling a little better because they feel that they're a little special with how they handle themselves away from the rink. And you know what? It might not even be that special. But if they think it's special, right? And if they think they're doing the stuff, that's some of that magic sauce you're talking about. So definitely agree. You know, I mean, at some points when you earn the right to feel prepared, and then we can get into different layers of that too. If whoever asked that question, because there is things you can do with visualization. There's things you can do, you know, with setting your pregame routine up. So like you're servicing your mind, you're servicing your body. You know, you're servicing your emotional side. So there's definitely ways to get prepared that way. It all depends on the level of athlete, the age of the athlete, maturity, and so on and so forth. But at the root of it all, there's just things that you can do as an athlete to be ready. And when they know those things on a mental side, it really makes a difference. So we got another question here about Facebook users. So you see it, guys, as I'm putting these questions up, which is 100% fine. If you haven't done the StreamYard agreement thing, I just see Facebook user. So that would show your name and have your picture for those of you who have signed up. So it says, do you think the win-lose mentality that you're talking about parallels to confidence in our kids' life in our social media-based world? Great question.
I think I know where you're going this one. If I don't get it right, I hope that this person that asked a question will poke me again here. You know, I work a lot on the athletes that are my clients, and I ask them to look at who they're following on social media. And I think that you want to talk about preparedness, you want to talk about high performance habits. Being able to teach our kids about social media is a high performance habit. And I think that, especially at the younger ages, well, maybe any age, you become like who you hang out with. You become like who you hang around. Mm-hmm. And I think the social media, in a way, becomes like your peer group. And if you're following the haters, if you're following the people that like drama, if you're following the people that don't even understand what the words win and lose mean, I don't think those are high performance habits. And I really work hard on the athletes that I coach. I'm like, cut down the people on your social media. Why do you have so many people? So, oh, I see. This is how you feel confident, because the more likes you get. Oh, so it's a liking contest. How do you think that's working for you? What I really think is that the biggest thing, social media is one of the biggest messer-uppers.
That's a technical term, everybody.
Yes, it's a basketball term. You wouldn't understand that as well in hockey, perhaps. But I think social media is one of the biggest messer-uppers. And here's why. The number one thing that in athletes of every sport, every age, all genders that I've worked with, and I ask them the number one thing that they're afraid of. And they tell me the number one thing is they're afraid of being embarrassed. Well, think about what the root of embarrassment is. The root of embarrassment is the fear of disapproval. Because if you messed up and you knew everybody would still like you and you'd still get a whole bunch of likes, you wouldn't feel embarrassed. So the social media increases the fear of disapproval. And so I think it's bigger than just winning and losing. I think social media affects confidence, it affects self-esteem, and high performance habits mean I'm really tight with my circle of who I follow and what's important to me. So that Facebook user that has that question on there, I think the parallel is amazing. And I also think that social media is the biggest fluff I've ever seen going, because it seems like on social media, everyone's life is awesome.
Right.
Everyone has good hair days all the time. Nobody ever messes up. Everyone is living the perfect world. And we know that that is a false view. So, the best we can to help our kids and our athletes weed out the fluff and focus on the substance and get rid of the parts of social media that are unhealthy for their growth.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I will echo there is the last part as that you got to, and I think it's a big comparison game, especially like you said. I mean, I think it goes throughout the age groups. You know, like I think you and I are probably just as likely to be a victim of it as anybody else. But these kids now, like in a different developmental stage, are watching people that are better than them because it's the highlight reel all the time. Right.
Yes.
And so you're watching that and you're watching that and you're watching that. And the message is, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. I'm not there. Right. And so you talk about the messaging, like what are we downloading? What content are they downloading? Right. And that operating system gets downloaded with not there yet, not there yet, still not good enough. Everyone's better. And that's where I think it gets real dangerous for athletes because, like you said, it is that highlight reel. So hard to win in the world of social media when you're a kid, right? If you're following good people, I mean, I do believe I'm putting out good content, like it's uplifting, right? It's like how to get better, how to fail, show some screw ups every now and again, celebrate those screw ups. Like that's real, you know, like pick who you follow, I think is a big thing. And I think parents should be involved in that. I mean, I'm not even sure to what age. My kids are 11, 9, and 7. So it's like hard for me to judge what a 15-year-old should or shouldn't do. But I mean, it's nice to have those conversations about who they are following. Why are they following them? Right? Like, what are they getting from that scenario? Is it helping you become, you know, the best athlete that you want to be? Always using that. I always use that as the backbone with my discussions with my athletes or with my kids is like, so you've told me you want to be a good hockey player, right? And that's what's really important to you. So how do you think this is serving that? Is it or isn't it? Right? I mean, you answer that question and now you're accountable to that answer, right? So once you start having these discussions, it becomes easier to kind of have these discussions about things of importance like social media. Thank you very much for that question. I think that's very relevant in today's day and age. We have one from Taylor Wilson, who's been a longtime supporter of the group. Is it possible to have too much self-confidence? If so, how do you find the perfect balance? I'll lead in with that on one. I had a podcast guest by the name of Stacey Roost. He's the assistant general manager of the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was actually a really great episode. His son is now drafted and potentially going to play in the WHL this year. And he's really careful with his prospects and his son included, because he said that confidence is hard to get and it's really easy to lose. And he said when at a hockey player level, like if you throw them into the fire too early and they're not quite there and now they get squashed back down to the bottom, like for certain personality types, it takes a long time to get that back and sometimes never. So is there such a thing? Like, I think Stacey would say there's not such a thing as too much self-confidence, I guess, unless it gets on arrogance or cockiness potentially. But I don't know. What do you think about too much self-confidence? Do you think that there is too much, or is there a perfect way to find a perfect balance?
I always think it's a scale. I think a scale on one end means too much and on another end means not enough. And I think when we get to the end of too much, I actually don't think that it's confidence anymore. I think it's arrogance, or I think it's false confidence. And every confident athlete that I've ever worked with also has humility. Because there's something about being confident that means I'm so confident, I can be humble, I can be vulnerable, and I can be transparent. And I can show you my weaknesses. That's how confident I am. And therefore, I'm not afraid to mess up because that's how confident I am. I think when it moves to arrogance and false confidence, we fear all of those things. We fear being exposed. We don't want to mess up.
Yeah.
We would never want to be vulnerable. Well, then to me, you don't have confidence. So I think that true confidence, you know when you're around it, like you can feel somebody who's confident but humble. Right. You also know what it means when somebody's arrogant, and you also know what false confidence feels like. and looks like. So I think there's not, if to answer the question specifically, I don't think there is too much. And when it becomes too much, it's not confidence anymore. We have to call it something else.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I echo that. I would give, if I was watching this, I'd be giving big thumbs up for that one, because I think that's right in line with what confidence is. I think when you become overconfident, if I'd say there's one pitfall of being overconfident, kind of that you're getting arrogant, is that you stop seeing what's in front of you, like the reality of what's in front of you, right? And then you also maybe stop improving because you think you've arrived at this spot and there's no place else for you to go, right? There's no challenges, there's no curiosity in how to get better, there's no understanding of people coming up on your tail. And obviously what happens when that happens, I mean, it's a slippery slope, right? From confidence to falling down the hill. So yeah, I would think that's one of the downsides of it too.
It just made me think of another thing. I think that highly confident athletes are also very coachable. Mm-hmm. I think that arrogant, false confident athletes are not coachable. Because when you're coachable, you use the word curious. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow, how do I get better? Wow, someone actually is going to give me some feedback here. Isn't that awesome? When I'm arrogant, it's like, what? You don't have to tell me anything. I already know it. Right. And false confidence is even worse because you're really worried about being exposed when you have false confidence. So confident athletes are highly coachable.
The one thing the parallel that I come to my mind right now is because the U.S. Open concluded today on the men's side, and is Tiger Woods. I mean, I don't know him as a person. I don't know what kind of guy he is or isn't, but like from an athletic perspective, back in 2000, he won the U.S. Open by 15 shots. It was like the greatest display ever on a golf course. And you know what he did after that? He reinvented his entire swing. Could you imagine being that confident? Right? But like most people in that spot would be like, I'm on top of the world. I've just crushed everybody. I'm the best golfer to play. I'm not touching a thing. He's like, no, I can be better. Right. And I think that that's confidence right there, right? To actually dive into how I can improve, to dismantle this swing that just had him win by 15 strokes and try and get better. Like that's a level of confidence that's insane, right? Whereas if he was arrogant about it, you couldn't have coached him, you couldn't have touched him, right? He was going to be really adamant about sticking in his sweet spot there. So anyways, I think at the highest level, you do see examples of that, right? What self-confidence is in real world and what that means in their actions. So thanks for that question, Taylor. Awesome. And yeah, Taylor says, great word, humble. I agree, man. Like humble and humility, those words, and gratefulness. Like that's one of the things I talk about with my players too, is like as a counterpoint to being nervous. If you're sitting in that locker room and you're nervous about something, just think about all the reasons you have to be grateful in that moment. It's really hard to be grateful and nervous at the same time. Grateful is just one of those things that it serves you in so many spots, right? And if we can practice that as well, that's another great tool there. So athletes who are listening, have the conversation with your parents about grateful. It's amazing. Seriously, like training camp, some people are still going through tryouts right now. A little tip, like sit there, like be grateful for the opportunity in front of you. Like for real, be grateful. Like you have a chance to make this team that you wanted to make. Be grateful for the chance that you're sitting there with these other athletes that are competing for the same spot. You get to test yourself in this moment, right? Like all these types of things to being grateful for. It's going to take your nervousness and it's going to take it somewhere else, because usually when you're nervous, you're focused on not things that you're grateful about, the things you're worried about, things you can't control. So little tip for some athletes there listening, or for parents to help with focus in big moments. My mom asked a question, so we have to get my mom on here.
Yeah.
Says, how do you not have fear? How do you not have fear? And I actually didn't ask you that question on your list. You said fear is a feeling, you can get over it. And my question is that, what does that mean? So maybe these go hand in hand. How do you not have fear, or do you have fear and you just get over it?
I think Carol's question, exactly the way that she wrote it, is fantastic.
Yay, Mom.
Yeah, Mom, rocking it. So I'll give you my opinion on fear. I think fear is a feeling, and we're called feelings because we're supposed to feel them. What a concept. I think that sport does the biggest disservice to fear of any context that I work with, because sport teaches us not to have it. And I disagree with that adamantly, because I think fear is part of sport. Fear is part of anything unknown, anything new, anything challenging. Anytime you have to get stretched, you're going to feel fear, and sport has made it not okay. Oh, just be confident. We teach people it's not okay to cry. We teach people not to feel fear. So, Carol, what I would say is have fear. That's completely normal. And if we could normalize fear, we wouldn't be afraid of being afraid. We could be afraid and be like, well, that's normal. I'll bet most of the people on the ice right now at this tryout that we're having, they probably feel the same way that I do. And I think that when we normalize it, we understand it's a feeling. We can get tools to know what to do with how we feel. Sport teaches us that emotions are in two buckets. Here's joy, happiness, motivated, let's go get it. And here's sad, disappointed, fearful, scared, nervous, anxious. And sport says, don't have any of these, only have these. I think that's so ridiculous. I think emotions are in one bucket. They're all one bucket. Why do we judge this bucket as good and this bucket as bad? I believe that one of the most important tools that we can teach our kids, our athletes, is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence says, I acknowledge and understand how I feel, and I have the tools to know what to do about it. When I say to the athletes that I'm working with, here's when I know I've done my job. When you're like, bring on any feeling, bring on any thought, let her rip. Okay, world sport tryouts, LPGA, what you got for me? Let her rip. Because I have the tools to know what to do with it. And fear fits right into that category.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that part about emotional intelligence too, because I think that in and of itself is kind of a new definition of mental toughness. I think I've gone over that in this group a little bit previously, and kind of that old adage, and maybe you agree, Shawnee, or not, but I remember when I was growing up, is like, if you were mentally tough, a mentally tough hockey player, even, because I think it means different things maybe in different sports. To be a mentally tough hockey player, you're this, you're the Roman day gladiator, modern day gladiator of Canada and the US in some places, right? And you're supposed to be this tough, like stoic, grit your teeth, like not feel anything kind of person is how it's been exemplified. And if that's what you're supposed to be, and that's what mental toughness is, man, there comes a lot of doubt when you actually feel things that you think you're not supposed to feel, right? Like, am I supposed to be here? Is this, nobody else is feeling this, so-and-so doesn't feel that. So now you start to question your own self-worth, your own level of belonging, your own level of belief. Whereas if we categorize this as emotional intelligence, and you know what, this is human, you are a human, first of all, and you are a human now playing hockey. Now, what do you do with that emotion? Like, it's okay to have it, right? First of all, check the box. You got it. Great. Makes you human. Now, how do we deal with it? And you can deal with it. And I think mental mental toughness is the ability to get past fear, get past anxiousness, get through it, right? So we can find a spot where we're going to be at our best performance level. So not that they never exist, it's just how do we get through them? It is hard to play anxious. I mean, you don't want to be on the ice playing anxious. You don't want to be on the ice being massively nervous. You mean, like, those are things that you'd prefer not to have while you're out there. But there is ways to minimize it, to get rid of it, to try and get into these other spots. Do you agree?
I do. And I think further to that, I think sport also does a disservice when we don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. And then it's happening. And then we just pretend it's not happening. Like, right. Think about parents or coaches. You've watched kids on the ice. You know what fear looks like. They're timid. They are not going into the corner. They're standing and they're spectating. We see it, but then we don't know what to do with it. You know what? You got to work harder. You got to put more effort in. I'm like, that's not what is holding them back. And I just think that here's another analogy. You don't prepare for the storm in the storm. You prepare for the storm before the storm. Like if you wait till you're in your nervousness right in the middle of your tryout, no. That's you waited way too long. You got to prepare for the storm before the storm. I think that these feelings of nervousness, anxiety, pressure, that's another big one in sport. What are we doing about it outside of the rink?
Right.
What are we doing it in our pregame? What are we doing about it in our pregame preparation? What are we talking with our kids about, on the way to the rink? What are coaches saying before kids get into a drill? Because the pressure, the anxiety, the fear, the nerves, it's coming. The storm is coming. So teach them how to put on a life jacket and swim and save themselves.
Right. Yeah. The one of the ways we talked about fear and how to get past fear. I mean, one of the things I do with my clients sometimes is just even discussing what it is that they are afraid of, and like really just like living in it. Like what is that worst thing that can happen? Like what are you scared of if you're a little guy and you're going out in the ice? Well, I'm scared of, maybe getting hurt. Well, you know what? Go try and run the biggest guy in the ice first shift of the game, every game. See what happens. You might fall over. Guarantee you get up, and I guarantee you're going to be okay. Like there's different trying to beat a defenseman one-on-one. What happens if you don't make it? What happens if you don't make it? What is the worst thing that really happens there? And when you get down to the worst thing, most of the time it's not as bad as we pretended it was going to be. Right? Like it's actually this made up place that we think is that all this terrible stuff is going to happen. And it's not really that real. So for some people, I find that works really well when they can actually classify what that is. And that worst thing isn't actually that bad. It's like, oh, let's go out there and get it. Right? Like now we've actually qualified it. We've been able to acknowledge what it is, give it its spot. And now we realize that, hey, it's nothing to be really that scared of. So it can free athletes up sometimes. So for parents out there, that's another little tip you can do if you have an athlete that's fearful. Give them talk about what that thing is and give them potentially an action that can help them explore, what that is. And again, that's one thing you've heard me talk about just a few videos ago is intention. If their intention for that day is I'm going to now try and conquer this thing, as Shawnee says, preparing for the storm before the storm, you can do that in a practice. You can do that on the first shift of the game. You can do that before it becomes a big deal, as long as they go into that game with intention. We are running out of time, Shawnee. Should we touch on the fact that parents can potentially pass on their fears, or do you think we should save that for another time?
If you get me going on that one, we're definitely going to be over time. Maybe it baits the hook for another good fishing session.
Right. No, I think we're good. I think one, like I said, I know you and I could talk forever. A lot of great questions tonight. We had a lot of people on the group, and I know a lot of people, lives are crazy, so people can watch us on their own time afterwards on the replay. But one thing I do want to mention is first of all, thank you, Shawnee, for coming out and sharing all that great stuff with us. And two is that Shawnee, this is the big announcement, is going to be our first masterclass expert. So Shawnee has created some online content for her own page, and she's going to release lesson 1, I believe, out of a 3-part series on her mental toughness. So, and also, which this is I think this is the biggest part, not only are you guys going to get access, our members are going to get access to that training, you are also going to get Shawnee for an hour as a coach. So everyone who's in that group can take the course and get Shawnee in a Zoom meeting to walk through some of the concepts, some of the homework, some of the worksheets, and make sure that it applies to them. So super, super special what we got going on here, and that'll be happening in October at some point. But I'm really pumped to be working with you and have your content available to my crew. So thanks so much for doing that, Shawnee. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that first lesson is and what they can expect.
Well, before I give you a little inside view, I want to tell your listeners that nobody has ever received access in this way to any of my content. So Jason, I don't know how the heck you got me to agree to it, but I love it. Your group is going to be a first.
Awesome.
And I'm really looking forward to a first. Here's the quick version. They're going to learn why fear is about hiding. And when we hide, we cannot grow. And the opposite of when we don't grow, so we're stagnant, we're fearful. What does it look like? So I use the analogy in these lessons of the zoo and the jungle. The zoo is safe, the zoo is easy, and the zoo is predictable. The jungle is hard, unsafe, and unpredictable. And sport replicates the jungle far more than the zoo. And I ask parents and coaches all of the time, are your practices, are your drills, are your conversations with your child or your athlete, are you preparing them for the jungle or the zoo? Because I know for sure the zoo will never, ever prepare them for the jungle. And much of the time we are being the zookeeper. We're feeding them and we're making sport as predictable as possible, and we're actually hindering their growth. Right. So lesson one, oh man, we are going to dive in there.
That's awesome. No, that's really great. I love the analogies there and the way you've even your wording, right, and the way you speak about that. It's so accessible. I find for any age, I know that my boys get it. I know that it still works for teenagers, adults, and I really like that you include. And that's the other thing here, people, is that this is including the parents. So yes, your athlete can see this. Yes, your athlete can go through it, but it's also meant for you as parents to go through, so you understand the language, you understand your role in what is happening there with your athlete. So really, really excited to be opening this up to you guys soon. And the other aspect of this, which I've already mentioned earlier, but my goodness, talk about fear. Like, so we're packaging this around sport again, but how often does fear hold our kids back in life? Right? And exploring new things and stepping into new opportunities and taking on challenges and scenarios in school that maybe they're a little bit hesitant of. Like, this applies all over the place. And again, it's going to put a stamp on, yes, you're going to be a better athlete, but yes, you're also going to have tools to become a better, more confident person. So really excited to introduce that, Shawnee. Amazing stuff. And I don't know how I did it either, but hey, I did it. I got you to do it. And I know this group is going to support you, and it's going to be awesome. So super pumped, guys. And then for everyone that was on here today too, I talked about the coaches site. This is a $250 free voucher. Shawnee, I'm going to get you one too, because for coming on here today. It's a virtual summit this weekend. It is hockey related, but there's a ton of like top shelf coaches that are talking about inclusiveness. They're talking about diversity in sport. They're talking about culture and like a lot of different topics that aren't just hockey specific. So I know that you'll get a lot out of it too. And again, you don't have to be a coach here, people. Like, for parents who are into any of that stuff, this is a really valuable resource, and you have 30 days access to all the content there. So we'll pick somebody here out of the crowd, one or two. I'll do a draw, and Shawnee, you get one for spending your time with us and all the great things you're doing here in this group. And that'll cover it for today. So thanks so much, everyone. Shawnee, thank you. And we'll see Shawnee here in October again with her content and with her coaching session. So more to come with Shawnee. And I'm sure, Shawnee, you're available on social media, I believe, right? On Instagram is where you're at. And where else? You're at winning. You're Shawnee Harle, I believe, .com, right? Is where your website is?
Yeah, they should be able to see it on that. Oh, that's the wrong hand. Oh, right. Oh,
there you go. Yeah.
There it is.
ShawneeHarle.com is the website. And then on social media, are you Shawnee Harle as well?
I'm Shawnee Harle on all of my social media platforms. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, pick a follow for Shawnee there. Follow her stuff. She's got great stuff online. Get to know her a little more, and you'll see more of her here in the group in October. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Till next time, play hard and keep your head up.